So hi, good evening. Thank you for staying on for the last session. I know it's been a long day, but I think it's a fantastic initiative by IVCA. So, let's hope we keep having these sessions again and again. We've got a short period of time. I'll quickly kick off with some data points that, again, the IVCA team has been very helpful in providing with. So India needs approximately USD 10 trillion by 2070 for net zero, one data point. Women participation is still less than 15% at partner level in Indian PEVC, another data point. The Marching Sheep Inclusion Index 2025, which studied 840 listed companies across 30 sectors, found that companies with more women in leadership positions delivered 50% higher profit after tax, PAT. Yet, 63.5% of Indian companies have no women in key managerial roles. So if you put all of that data together, you start to get to the conversation we are going to have today. Last bit, for all of us who raise money, there are 344 female billionaires in the world today, controlling USD 1.7 trillion, and with their assets growing faster than those of their male counterparts. With that in mind, let me get to my first question. When we talk about India's green transition needing trillions of dollars over the next decade, why should gender diversity in investment teams be a part of that conversation? What does it change on the ground from a commercial lens?
All right, thank you so much. Firstly, Nupur and IVCA for having us. Big round of applause for those of you who are still here listening to this. This is, as per me, the most important conversation.
But thank you.
But please give a round of applause to yourself, and thank you. We will make your 20 minutes worthwhile, I promise. Nupur, we have known each other for a while, so you know that I tend to roll my eyes.
Go for it.
And always be startled when I get asked as a woman, why do women need to be at the workplace, and justifying why we need to be here. So I think it's always strange, but today I've come armed with some stats. So if you don't mind me reading off
Go for it.
some statistics as to how and why we should be here. I think if you look at investment teams with female representation, they on an average achieve 12% greater returns. And then if you have gender balanced teams, not just female representation, but completely gender balanced teams, then such teams in PEVC achieve up to 20% higher returns and a full 0.5x higher DPI. And companies with top quartile gender diversity are 25% more likely to be highly profitable. And not just on the investment team side, but if you look at founding teams, female-founded startups exit faster on average than male-funded startups. A recent BCG study said that women-funded startups generate 78 pence per pound invested compared to just 30 pence per pound invested for male-founded startups. And PE-backed companies, this is a Carlyle 2020 report, PE-backed companies with diverse boards see 12% higher earnings growth than non-diverse counterparts. And diverse-led PE funds outperformed the median quartile from vintage years 2000 to 2019. So I don't think this isn't
conversation then?
So I don't think this isn't correlation without causation, I would say, and there are definite patterns and intent to why this happens. And output metrics, which I just set apart, I think everywhere from just risk assessment to diverse viewpoints to just having cognitive diversity in a boardroom will definitely lead to better outcomes, which are, as we know from the stats, reflected in your IRR as well. Yeah.
Rahul?
Great. Thank you, IVCA and Nupur for having me here. I had actually recommended that, Shivani or Bhumika from our side should do this panel, but IVCA team was insistent that we need a male representation on the panel.
I'm glad. Thank you,
A male
Akriti, for
ally,
doing
if
that.
So-
I may add, so thank you.
But
for
again,
being
just
our male
resonating,
ally.
Anjali, what you said, right? I mean, the question should not be why. The question really is why not, right? And, Nupur, you spoke about the commercial lens. So half of the humans on this planet are female, right? The female participation in economic activity has been increasing, and that's great to see, which means that females or women are allocating much more. The consumption spend in every walk of consumption is now largely, if you look at the growth trends, it is more female-led, right, than male-led. Because male, obviously, because of the income patterns, spending power decision patterns earlier, that's changing a lot. And that is the commercial rationale for higher participation of women or females in every economic activity, right? If you look at our fund, both Quadria and HealthQuad, now almost 50% of the staff is female, right? Of course, there's work to be done at the senior levels, but that's legacy. We can't change that, unfortunately, fast enough. But I think we're moving, in the right direction. And at our portfolio levels, I think it's anywhere between 25 to 50%, depending on company to company. And it's good to see that the participation at, founder level, at board level, at senior CXO levels, that's also moving very much in the right direction. Now, again, I think you and Anjali, of course, spoke about, higher returns. But again, that's like trying to justify why there should be, and I would not really get into justification. I would actually look at it from a risk standpoint, right? Now, in a world where more income participation, more spending participation, spending decisions are being led by women, you'd be really doing, adverse risk decisions if you don't increase participation of women in investment decisions. If you look across our businesses, more and more businesses following this economic trend are now building strategies, building products or services which are focused on the women consumer. And if we look at our investment teams, if we don't have enough women participation in that investment decision making, and I think that is, if I take analogies, female team members or women team members of the team, they can do an equally or sometimes better job on, let's say, neutral decisions, but they can do a far greater job on decisions which are focused on the women consumer, obviously, right? So in this changing economic paradigm, I think it becomes more and more commercially viable to have more female participation.
Thank you. Rahul, that is actually part of my next question. Like we've agreed, we've got enough data that says gender-balanced leadership delivers stronger profitability and better risk-adjusted returns. And you brought this up about having a diverse team to identify pipeline and investment opportunities that may otherwise get overlooked if you had like a skewed team. Would you have any examples where you could throw light on how a diverse team that you have either influenced deal selection or ESG outcomes?
Sure. So, see, again, just building on what I said earlier, right? More economic activity participation and more businesses. We do only healthcare. And in healthcare, we are seeing, varied types of models, whether it is hospitals, diagnostic chains, pharma companies. Now, if you follow business decision trends over the last few years, more and more companies are now building business strategies around the women consumer, female consumer, right? And as I said, when we look at identifying opportunities in that, generally, I think, as I said, given, we've been doing this for the last 14, 15 years. So if I ask that question, that will a female or woman team member in the team do an equally or better job on reading trends, diligencing any neutral business? The answer is a resounding yes. But will they do a much better job on building thesis, diligencing, and doing more detailed analysis around businesses which are focused on the women consumer? The answer again is a resounding yes, right? And that is where that balance actually helps. And again, I think it's just pure logic, right? If you have only one pool of talent in your teams, it is but natural, unless, because we are all driven by human capabilities and human constraints. So if you have only one type of talent within your teams, the outcomes will also then be very lopsided, or outcomes will also then be very, I would say, sandboxed. And we really don't want to do it. And that is where we have seen over the last few years, as we have built more diverse teams, and IVCA recognized it. We got the Gender Action Award a couple of years back. The investment decision-making has become much more diverse and much more powerful, especially around businesses which are focused on the female consumer. On ESG, anyways, I think, again, at least what I've seen, and happy to be corrected, that across ESG firms, ESG due diligence firms, or firms who are doing consulting on ESG, anyways, I've generally seen more female participation than male participation. So I don't know what is the reason for that. But on ESG outcomes as well, it is just about having different voices on the table. We have seen this with our female-founded companies where you have I would say a fair or good level of participation from female CXOs or women CXOs. The context of discussions, the variety and the width of discussions and the depth of discussions is much different, right? And again, it is just about bringing that different perspective from various pools and various groups. We have, because Quadria is a regional investment firm, we also have different ethnicities, right? We have Indian team members, we have Southeast Asian, we have even Chinese, we have Brits also on the team. And again, in those conversations, when you see different perspectives, because all of us are attuned to, we're brought up differently, we think about commerce, we think about, things very differently, and getting that perspective from different team members is actually very valuable.
Very well said, Rahul. Thank you. Picking up on that conversation on ESG, Anjali, I'm coming to you. So there are no standard frameworks for the industry when it comes to either evaluating or progressing on or even monitoring of gender metrics, right? ESG, including the IFC performance standards, does not include gender. Right? The G stands for governance, and the only extent of gender covered in ESG is to the extent of labor laws as they apply. So given that there is no standard framework or a reference point, are there any interventions that you've seen that have actually moved the needle in PVC firms beyond policies on paper, like practically speaking?
You're absolutely right, Nupur. Gender gets subsumed under the S and the G, where under social, it's normally covered under the multiple order effects of the types of companies we're investing in, the number of female employees or female consumers, and the impact it's making on their lives and income and accessibility. And in G, it's always about governance within firms, women on boards, women in leadership positions, keeping track of these baseline metrics on women in IC teams. So gender is underweight, I would say, definitely within ESG frameworks, and definitely deserves to be a pillar of its own. But having said that, I'd like to believe that more recently, increasingly, the narrative is shifting to having a very dedicated gender-balanced framework, and gender lens investing in itself has become a very recognized area of importance and study, I would say. And there are several frameworks, with 2X Global being one of them, where they really have recognized this fact that gender is underweight within ESG, and it needs to have a dedicated set of, let's say, frameworks and SOPs that investment firms have to follow. Having said that, yes, it's being recognized and definitely needs more importance, but what are the on-ground, let's say, activations and implementations? I think this is different for different firms. ESG itself, when applied to a younger VC framework, where it's about seed and early stage investing, itself is very hard, given that there are lack of, let's say, identifiable, even tangible metrics. It's mostly you're backing an idea stage company. But having said that, I think there's a lot that could be done. For example, we use something called a SMART framework, where we say that pick up 2 to 3 goals or objectives, and SMART really is an acronym for specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. And what I mean by setting some of these smart aligned goals really is, for example, that we will ensure that 50% of all resumes or CVs that come for a job opening at the firm will be from female candidates, or we will aim to get at least 30% of VP plus level candidates as female or higher as female. We will invest in N number of portfolio companies that are female. So I think firstly it's important to recognize and set these goals, and I think beyond goal setting, the harder part is really then the scaffolding and the shepherding and ensuring that you meticulously take this to action, because that is not straightforward as well, given the early stage nature of investing, right? So it also is about beyond the due diligence checklist, and at the time of, say, sourcing and at the time of making the investment, how do you really scale these frameworks all the way from seed to A, B, C, all the way until exit, and you're almost passing on that mantle, because you as an early stage investor can implement a bunch of frameworks, and then say a larger Series B investor comes, you step out from the board, and then suddenly the priorities change. So I think there is also therefore that burden on us as the first institutional investors to ensure that mantle kind of carries forward all the way up until exit. So I think for early stage, have specific identifiable metrics, and the SMART framework is something that we actively use. And second is, it's not just the point in time in which you enter, but ensuring that it carries all the way through, well beyond your time on the cap table.
We are out of time, but I do want to ask this last question, and maybe we can do like very quick responses to this one. So taking from here, what can platforms like, say, Winpe and DFIs, for example, who believe gender diversity is important, how can they use capital and their soft power to mainstream gender as a hard investment criterion in and by green funds?
Sure, so if I can start, I think that's already happening, Nupur. So we have few DFI LPs, and I think European DFIs are at the forefront of this, and few impact investors as well. So some have actually, made it a mandate when they're investing in the fund. They're putting in their side letters more and more that you have to take these gender actions at your fund level and portfolio level, which means elevating female or women participation in the teams on the one hand. Second is many impact LPs, and we've nuanced our impact thesis to it. They're also making us report how our investee companies, right, through our investments, how are they increasing or bringing in gender neutrality or gender action into their services and products as well, right? I think there's, WHO, WEF data that in Asia, in developing Asia specifically, women spend 25% more time in poor health than men because of obvious reasons. So how are your investee companies through your investments addressing that? And they want us to measure that and report that and report it back to their contributors. But many have now started putting in side letters. These are the gender actions you'll have to take at fund and portfolio companies. So I think that moving in the right direction.
I fully agree with Rahul. I think a lot is already being said and done. And forums like this also exactly serve that purpose of just awareness creation. And the fact that a lot of this is now being institutionalized and formalized as well. It's not just a talking point, but there is action on the ground. And I think, Nupur, kudos to you at Winpe as well, because we have an organization like yours that's already set a lot of these frameworks in place. IVCA, for example, has been ahead of the curve with their work on the D&I Council. And so I don't think there's too much reinventing of the wheel that's really required here, and there are sufficient processes and institutions that we can refer and look up to. It's only intent, and I think just converting that intent to a bias for action, I would say. Yeah.
Super. Thank you so much. I think we should let the audience go. Thank you so much, Anjali and Rahul. I couldn't have asked for a better set of panelists, data, and believers.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Rahul. Thanks, Nupur.